Just want to share a few perspectives with you on Carnal Knowledge, a 1971 comedy drama directed by Mike Nichols and written by Jules Feiffer based on his unproduced play. The film stars Jack Nicholson as Johnathan, an accountant whose lifelong pastime is having sex with as many women as possible. The film also stars Art Garfunkel, Ann-Margret, Candice Bergen, Carole Kane, and Rita Moreno. The film's frank perspective on sex was controversial for its day. The Georgia Supreme Court upheld the conviction of a theater owner who the police charged with distributing obscene material, despite the film having only one partially nude scene in it. There is very little, if any, real profanity in the film, but what makes this film graphic is how it lays bare the underlying motivations of male and female attraction and how sex rather than intellect is the greatest common denominator determining who we select for our mates. That we are animals first and foremost, and that our lives are defined by the struggle between our principles and our urges. We wear masks. When I go to work, I am a professional. When I visit my mother, I am her son. When I'm with the guys, I'm macho. When I'm here, I swear. But when I attend church, I don't. When I'm over there, I'm that way. And when I'm over here, I'm this way. So who am I? Throughout the course of a day, we hide our real identities behind masks that we change whenever it's convenient. The masks that we wear reflect our ideal selves and what we would like others to think of us. Who we are when there are no laws or morals restricting us, or who we really are. In this exchange, Susan is speaking of herself in the third person, but Sandy doesn't pick up on it. Susan: this is the first time I've ever been to a college mixer. Sandy: me too, I hate them. Susan: I hate them too. Sandy: such a phony way of meeting people. Susan: everybody puts on an act. Sandy: so even if you meet somebody, you don't know who you meet. Susan: because you're meeting the act. Sandy: that's right, not the person. Susan: I'm not sure I agree. Sandy: with what? Susan: with what you said. Sandy: no, I don't either. Susan: you don't agree with what you said? Sandy: how do you feel about it? Susan: I think people only like to think they're putting on an act, but it's not an act. It's really them. If they think it's an act, they feel better because they think they could always change it. Sandy: you mean they're kidding themselves because it's not really an act? Susan: yes, it is an act, but the act is them. Sandy: but if it's them, how can it be an act? Susan: because they're an act. Sandy: but they're also real. Susan: no. Sandy: you mean I'm not real? Susan: no. Sandy: I'm an act. Susan: it's all right, I'm an act too. Don't you behave differently with different people? Now, Sandy doesn't realize that Susan is talking about herself because he hasn't been with many women. She isn't the straight-laced coed she appears to be. While she is talking to Sandy, she peeks over his shoulder at Johnathan, who is the film's bad boy. Women are from Venus. Johnathan has had sex with so many women that he develops a sixth sense, enabling him to understand their alien alphabet, that when they say something they really mean something else. Sandy hasn't had a lot of sex and hasn't acquired the power to understand the opposite sex. For example, Susan, speaking in code, tells Sandy that she isn't the girl he thinks she is, but he doesn't catch on to her meaning. He thinks that she is the girl next door, but she is trying to tell him that she isn't, which becomes evident when she dates Johnathan. Now here's that exchange between Susan and Sandy. Susan: you're the only boy I know that I can talk to. Sandy: I can't see you being quiet for any guy. Susan: not quiet, but if you know somebody's not going to approve of what you are. Sandy: whatever that is. Susan: whatever that is, well, you just don't tell them. I mean, if I like a boy and I want to keep liking, I want him to keep liking me, I'm going, and I'm brighter than he is, I have to not show it or I'll lose him. So it's hard. Control. Sandy and Johnathan are two sides of the same coin. Sandy is the type of man women say they want because he's a gentleman, accommodating, patient, follows the rules, etc. On the other hand, Johnathan is the type of man women really want. He knows what he wants, he's direct, but most importantly, he's a bad boy. On title 4 of the DVD, Sandy and Johnathan are on their second date. Sandy and Susan, on their second date. Sandy wants to kiss Susan and asks her permission, like a gentleman. She smiles modestly and insults him in a nice way. "You're the only boy I know that I can talk to," she tells Sandy. She tells Sandy how to kiss her, and he obeys gratefully. He brags to Johnathan. On the next date, Sandy tries to put his hand on her breast. Susan resists and gives him a hand job instead. Sandy reports back to Johnathan, who sets up a date with Susan also. They speak code to each other first to kick things off, saying things that really mean something else. A week later, they meet to have sex because she has no control over the urges he brings out of her in just 1 week. On their third date, Susan says to Sandy that he's the only boy she can talk to because he doesn't arouse her. And as a result, she is able to discipline her sexual urges and exercise control of her mind. Slavery. A man or woman who is forced to do something against his or her will is a slave. Matthew 16, verse 23. Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." In this case, the slave master is the urge for sex, and the slave is man's higher mind or guide, his intellect, morals, and principles. When Johnathan takes Susan out on their first date, she asks him, "Do you always date your best friend's girlfriends?" as though she is dating him against her will, like a slave. Her lower urge for sex has enslaved her superior intelligence and principles. Loss of principles. Jonathan's better judgment is clouded by his sexual urges. At 43 minutes and 50 seconds into the DVD, he is having dinner in an upscale restaurant with a model named Bobby, his ideal woman because of her large breasts. She reads his palm. Now this is Bobby. "You have a long lifeline. You're going to get along. You're difficult to get along with. You always know your own mind. You won't stop going after what you want until you get it." In the cab, he asks her if she can cook, and she says no. She asks him if he'll marry her, and he says jokingly that he'd marry her in a minute. He asks her if she'll take him for every cent he has if he divorces her. Again, she answers yes. She even tells him that she's a gold digger. The fur coat that she has on could have come from a former husband she took to the cleaners. But Jonathan's lust for her clouds his better judgment, and he pays the price for it later. Like Adam, who becomes wise after eating the forbidden fruit, having sex with many women opens Jonathan's eyes up to the flesh side of women that results in him receiving a sentence of death, like Adam, in the form of ED, or erectile dysfunction. These are just a few perspectives that I wanted to share with you that I got watching Carnal Knowledge. If you like the video, please leave a like. Also in the description, there's a link to my movie blog where I have other perspectives on films such as the one that I read to you here. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.